All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's Lunch and Learn. My name is John Kia. I'm the content manager at GAMA International and your host this afternoon. I'm excited to announce today's speaker. He is the co-founder, vice president, and marketing director for Benchmark Business Group, LLC, founded in 1999. Benchmark is the only global licensee of eMyth worldwide and is a business coaching and consulting company with current and past clients in most of the 50 states and 8 other countries. He also serves as the company's CFO and is a senior certified eMyth consultant. In February of 2011, Benchmark acquired the name and certain assets of the Henderson Business Group, Inc., and our speaker serves as its general counsel. The brokerage division is a business evaluation and brokerage service primarily representing sellers of business, but also working with buyers seeking acquisition opportunities and a broad range of succession and exit planning issues within the businesses it serves. So, without any further delay, I give you Mr. Robert Cleven.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate that introduction. I also, I think it's important to note that besides all of that, I'm kind of a science geek, meaning there's this little science guy inside of me that sits and reads Stephen Hawking books and Scientific American in the easy chair at night. So I want you to indulge me a little bit for this metaphorical title, which I'm going to explain further in just a minute. But first of all, I want to talk about what we want to accomplish in this half hour and then tell you just a little bit more about us as it relates to the insurance and financial services industry. We're going to talk today about something that's going to provide field leaders and managers, hopefully with greater tools for supporting agents in breaking free of what we call the 3 black holes of an agency. What we're really talking about are matters involving a productive point of view, a productive point of view, managing time, and expanding capacity. These are 3 items that come up probably 95% of the time in all the conversations that we have with agents. So who are we anyway? As John said, we're an expert in business development and design, serving a broad array of industries since 1999, but more recently, in the last 10 years, we've specialized in insurance and financial services, agency and field management design, to the extent that currently, as we speak, about 60% of our clientele is from that industry. We have designed and coach a comprehensive business development program called Optimal Outcome. You're going to hear me refer to that a couple of times throughout this presentation because of the fact that it has a lot to do with how the agent thinks. It has a lot to do with how the agent derives value from their business. So what is optimal outcome, or what is an optimal outcome to any business owner? First of all, it's realizing value through business ownership, whether it's value to your life, providing value to your clients, providing valuable experience for your team, or contributing value to your community, and ultimately receiving value for what your business does and what your business brings you. The other thing I want you to understand as part of this premise that we're going to talk about today is part of our philosophy, and that is the fact that we know from our experience with thousands of businesses over the last 17 years that every single business and every single agency is perfectly designed to get the results that they're now getting. In other words, whatever is happening today, whether it's poor sales or average sales or inconsistent results or whatever it might be, we know, as a matter of fact, that it's perfectly designed to get it. So why, you got to ask, is it designed that way? Because the agent designed it that way. That's the simple answer. But why did they do that? Because of the way they think. Because of the way they think and what they know. We're not only talking about agencies, we're talking about management units, we're talking about any business of any kind that's looking for a result different than what they're getting. So in designing an optimal outcome, or designing your O as we call it, if an agent wants to achieve their O, if they need to redesign the agency to take them there. So what prevents them from doing it? Well, again, it begins with the way they think and their own point of view. Entrepreneurial thinking, true entrepreneurial thinking, is an understanding of the power of leverage, and that's really what we're going to begin to talk about today, is how do you even begin to think about that. But let me explain my metaphor, right? The definition of a black hole. There's our friend Stephen Hawking, who I said, you know, I love to read his books. He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever read. Most of you probably know what a black hole is, or you've heard about it. but what it really is a region of space-time exhibiting such a strong gravitational effect that nothing, including light, can escape from inside of it. More importantly, surrounding every black hole, there's this event horizon. There's this area of space beyond which there is a point of no return. In other words, if you get too close and you go beyond the event horizon, you can disappear forever. But if you are saved from that event horizon, you might find yourself in a much more palatable situation. But the escape velocity is incredible. You have agents, you have advisors that work through you, or that you mentor, or however you interact with them, that are on the event horizon, that are somewhere near that and are on the verge of being lost forever, or could be if something isn't done to help them. So there are three critical skills that we know successful agents have mastered. The first one is a productive point of view. The second one is knowing how to manage time. And the third is knowing how to expand and manage capacity. We've been spending a lot of time studying what seems to work and what doesn't work within agencies. And these three things have become critical in all of the agencies that we've observed. So let's take the first one, the point of view. Here's our friend Albert Einstein, another science guy, obviously. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created him. That's sort of a flip side of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But that's another way of recognizing the fact that in order to begin to do something differently, you need to begin to think differently. The only consistent difference that we found between a successful and an unsuccessful agent or advisor is the way they think. We've looked at the economy, we've looked at product, we've looked at pricing, we've looked at staffing, we've looked at all the things that go into making an agency successful, and they all do in one way or the other, but the critical difference that seems to pop up every single time we compare a successful agent to a not so successful agent is they just don't think the same. You change the way they think, and their habits and behaviors will suddenly have room to change. Change their habits and behaviors and their activities, and the results immediately begin to change. Happens every time. There are three types of unproductive thinking. First, problem versus solutions thinking. You've heard people who live in the problem. They seem to wallow in the problem all the time, and they never seem to talk about solution. Second is blame and finger pointing. You've heard this all the time. The flip side of blame and the sister or the sibling of blame is victimhood, right? That's next. Victim versus champion thinking. So let's take a little poll here. Which of the following would you consider unproductive points of view? I can't hire or keep good people. Premium pricing is preventing sales. Goals happen to me. I can't find qualified leads. I can't get people to avoid delays and close more quickly. I never have enough time, or all of the above. Okay? So 20% of you, and the votes are still coming in. They're changing, they're moving, they're changing. Okay, we're getting close to a result very soon. All right. 14% of you say number one, I can't hire or keep good people. 14% say number two, premium pricing is preventing sales. And 71% say all of the above. So the 71% have it. You're right. All of them involve some kind of unproductive thinking. So how do you talk it through? How do you deal with your agent? What's the solution to this? The first thing is to listen very carefully to your agent's point of view. Listen. By listening, I mean not talking, listening. Really trying to hear what's going on with the agent and what kind of point of view they seem to be exhibiting. Also understand some negative points of view may be true. Some of the things that your agents or advisors tell you and they're complaining about and they're upset about are in fact true. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to stay in that negativity, that they have to stay where they are, because true entrepreneurial thinkers are always finding a workaround. They're always finding the solution to the problem and not living in the problem. So the problem itself may be true, no question about it. Listen for negative points of view such as I can't, if only, yeah but, or yes but, and so on. So listen for the language And then challenge the point of view, not in a judgmental way. I'm simply saying, ask them, how important that it is for them to hold on to that point of view and what that point of view means to them. Get into it and question it. Leave them with an inquiry. On top of that, ask powerful questions like, what would be the result if you can't overcome this challenge? How important is this, in other words? Is this a make or break it deal for you? Is this something that is important to you? Should it be explored further? Should we figure out how to get around it? Give me your ideas on 3 options for resolving this issue. How are your stated objectives for this business going to be impacted? Are they? And then finally, here's probably one of the biggest ones. What is it about you that's preventing a solution from becoming clear in this situation? Let's be honest, folks. What is it about you? Most of the time, the biggest problem that an agent has is themselves and trying to get out of their own way and trying to overcome their own agendas. But the important thing is, don't tell them how they should think. That's the wrong approach, really. Don't pass judgment. In other words, you're not there to be their judge and their jury and so on. You're there to ask them questions. The more they understand the problem themselves and come to their own conclusions, the more powerful the result's going to be. But don't ignore them. In other words, if you let negative points of view go by and they just sort of exist, they're only going to get worse usually. They're simply going to be reinforced and they're going to be worse. But listen, ask, the more you can help your agent come to their own conclusions and understand how their point of view is actually getting in their way, the more permanent the solution is going to be, because they will buy into what they've discovered for themselves, much less what you've told them in a judgmental tone or in a telling sort of way. Okay? So let's talk about managing time, the next one. The most successful agents and advisors in the world work in weeks with 7 days, and each day has only 24 hours. Imagine that. It's the same thing we all have, right? No matter how successful or unsuccessful we all are, time is a constant. It doesn't change. So we say to ourselves, there's not enough time in my day. There's more than to do than I can get done. There's too much work, not enough time, not enough time. Well, once again, there's 24 hours in every day, 7 days in every week, 52 weeks in every year, and now you and your agent, your advisor, are looking at 2017, where there are no more hours, no more days, no more weeks, no more months than there are today, and yet the goals are higher. How's that going to work? How are you going to find the leverage to find the time to do what's necessary? The fact of the matter is you cannot control time. You can only control how you spend it. Time flies. That's the bad news. The good news is you're the pilot. Change your belief and you change what's possible. To get different results in a day, you need to redesign the way your business works and the way your time works within that business. So here's another question for you. How do you discuss time with your agents or advisors? Don't know? Annually? When it becomes an issue, or other? Okay? So half of you say, well, let's see, now getting there. Okay. 40% say annually at their review, and 60% say when it becomes an issue. Okay? Well, that'll be an interesting conversation. At least none of you said, I don't, which is very important. So you do discuss it with them at some point. Just like the business, time is a matter of design. In other words, this sounds like a relatively simple statement, but you're born and you die, and in between is time, and you get to decide how to use it. So all you really have is time, right? All your agent really has is time. They have to simply design it in such a way that they're going to get what they want. Listen to this statement, and I'm going to read it twice. Most agents and advisors unconsciously spend too much time on activities that are not getting the results they want and have left themselves too little time to do the things that will get those results. Most agents and advisors unconsciously spend too much time on activities that are not getting the results they want and have left themselves too little time to do the things that will get those results. It's like saying to you, I don't have time to do what's working. I only have time to do what's not working. How sane is that? So here's the conversation. Listen for statements like, my clients won't work with anyone else. You know that's not true. Or, it's easier to do it myself. Well, what sometimes that means is, besides I need to be in control of everything, sometimes that just means I like doing it myself, even though it's not something I really ought to be spending my time on because it's not productive for my business. Or I can't find the time for, or the brother I don't have the time for, or I keep getting interrupted by, right? What that's really saying is I have a business that's designed to interrupt me. I have a business that's designed to never allow my day to turn out as planned or to never get my list completed. That's the way I've designed it. So ask probing questions when you meet with your advisor. You know, in other words, listen, ask once again. Ask about how their day is spent. Ask about how they use their time. Be very, very direct and very inquisitive about how they do it. Ask to see their calendar. For example, if your advisors have a prospecting issue or they don't have enough leads in their pipeline, oftentimes you'll look at their calendar and there's nothing blocked for prospecting. Nothing. There's or there's too little blocked for prospecting. Calendars can be very revealing, but it tells you what they think is important. Discuss their level of control. How much control do they have over their time? How much is their staff, for example, if they have staff, instructed to give them do not disturb time? Is there any out there for them? Do they manage blocks of time to be able to get each and every responsibility done that they need to? And keep the conversation about discovery. Once again, patience is going to yield very lasting results. If you're patient enough and you allow the conversation to take its course and you learn to ask very powerful questions, the net result is going to be far more permanent, and you're going to see far more buy-in by your agent or your advisor. So let's go to the final idea. Number 3, expanding capacity. The most successful agencies in the world are run by effective systems, and people run the systems. Systems run the business. People run the systems. So I want to talk to you about a technique that we use. It's called a stop doing list. We often advise our clients, whether they're agents or they're field leaders or whoever they are, to keep a personal stop doing list. What are the things that if I could right now I would stop doing, and I would figure out a way for somebody else to do these things, probably better than me in some cases, but to have an exact way for them to do it. And it might be somebody you contract with or you hire or whatever the case might be, but it's stuff that you really shouldn't be doing. You really ought to be letting somebody else do it because you're uniquely qualified to do some things that you don't have time to do because you've got all this other stuff going on. So you keep this running stop doing list. Interestingly enough, over time, that stop doing list becomes the job description for the next hire. How you're going to replace the time that you're burning yourself doing things that you shouldn't be doing. As you know, for agents and advisors, the only time they're really making money and the only time that the business is really growing is when they're sitting in front of a prospect or a client. That's when they're really making money. But if they're doing anything other than that, you have to really examine why. And you have to examine what it is about their organizational structure and so forth that's making that happen. So other people's time is necessary. As you know, and as you've experienced, agents that are successful and reach their optimal outcome, as we call it, don't do it by themselves. And as a matter of fact, agents that do it by themselves often burn out and leave the business. And as you know as well, as a field leader, that turnover is expensive. We also have found that agents that hire people without a structure, that hire people prematurely before they're really ready to seat them, before they're really ready to make sure that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, often find themselves frustrated and unable to function productively. So it's a little bit of both. If you hire them at all, or if you don't hire them at all, or if you hire them at the wrong time and in the wrong capacity or in the wrong without the proper structure to put them in, you could experience the same kind of frustration. So how do you expand capacity? Well, there are 6 things that I'm going to point you to. The first is the agent and advisor's time has to be designed to work on it, not just in it. There has to be a portion, preferably of every working day, where they're working on it. Whether it's an hour or half an hour or whatever it is, they need to be strategic for some period of time if anything is ever going to change. Secondly, there has to be an ownership of their optimal outcome, or their ultimate vision, as it were, at the operating level. What does that mean? Well, it means that the practice or the business has to be structurally and functionally designed to achieve the optimal outcome. In other words, you look at what that vision is, and the business itself has to be structured to do that, so there are functions going on within that business that point that way. Second, there's team awareness of the real elements of achieving the optimal outcome. Everybody buys in. They all understand what it is. They all understand why they're showing up every day, but they're not just there to serve clients. They're there to build a business that serves clients. And there are systems designed to bring about the consistent result. You don't do things in a chaotic environment where people are doing what they want to do at any given time, depending on the way they feel. This is a systemic structure that works consistently and predictably. So that's the third one, systems, replicable leverage, in other words. It's people and processes with a heart and logic, not just the logic of how work is done, but the heart of it, which expresses the culture of the business organization that the agent has created. And then the systems have to be continuously used, proven, and improved. Use, prove, improve on a constant basis. Systems are dynamic. They're not static. They are constantly under some kind of change because the world is constantly changing. And then finally, what supports them on an ongoing basis are regularly structured meetings. We can do the entire several webinars on structured meetings and what that looks like, and that'll be coming on down the pike. But for now, let's just recognize it's there. So then the systems have to be simple. Here's our friend again. You don't really understand something unless you can explain it to your grandmother, he says. That's a very good rule of thumb. Simple, but not too simple. Simple enough, right? So the fourth item is delegation, getting consistent and predictable results through others, right? And it's not abdication. Abdication is throwing your hands up and saying, I don't know how to do this, or I don't want to do this, so I'm just going to let you do it, and I hope you do a good job. Delegation is about specifically designing how the work is going to get done and what the outcome is supposed to be, and then making sure that the person who gets that accountability knows what it is they're supposed to do, and that involves effective training, which is number 5, teaching the staff to be masters of the system. And then finally, number 6, the effective management activity, which is managing process, not people. This is the really good news for anybody in management. I'm here to tell you not to manage people. I'm here to tell you the reason is the people are unmanageable. What you're really managing is a process. And when you're managing a process and you're helping people become masters of the process, the simple conversation in management is, does the process work? Is it in place? And if it is, and it is working, are you working it? Are you doing what it says, right? That's the simple set of questions. Beyond that, it's not a personal issue, it's a process issue. So, the questions you ask your agent is you take the 6 elements in your conversation with your agent and you sit down and you talk to them about, are they working on it, not just in it? Are they providing that time on their calendar? Is their ownership of their optimal outcome or their vision existing at the operating level? Does their team know about it? Are there systems in place? Ask them to show them to you. Look at them. See if they're in writing. If they say there's systems but there's nothing in writing, it's probably folklore or habit. Systems actually are documented processes. And then, are they delegating properly? Is there effective training in place? And finally, are they effectively managing, and how are they managing? That's a whole agenda of how you talk to your people around these issues. We believe in our company, and I think we've been able to prove this in a number of instances, that every single agency is just 3 issues away from becoming world class. If the agent has a productive point of view, and they've mastered that, if they've mastered the management of time, and they've mastered the ability to expand capacity, you will see a world-class agency. Those are three issues that probably trump almost every other issue that you'll find within an agency. So, back to our analogy, as a field leader, you're the one who can catch them at that event horizon. You're the one who can identify whether any of these three things, or any combination of these three things are bothering your agents, or they have not been mastered by your agents, and this is where you can really help them. You can help them in a very serious way. So, that's it. I hope this has been very helpful to you, and I'm going to turn it back over to John unless somebody has some questions. Thank you.
All right, and if you do have any questions, feel free to follow up with the contact information below. But I would like to thank you, Mr. Clemens, for taking the time to provide us this valuable information and set of tools. And thank you all for taking the time to listen in. Please join us on September 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next Lunch and Learn, Retirement Alpha, What Experts Know and Your Agents Don't Understand, presented by Tom Hegna. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.